Hey folks, welcome to our webinar. It is 9 o'clock on the West Coast and 12 o'clock on the East Coast. We're so glad that you are with us today. Thanks for being with us as we start our webinar here. Why PTZs are taking over live streaming. So again, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. And we are a company that has been around for a while now, about 20 years. We work with churches mainly. And today we're going to be working with PTZ Optics. Our guest will be Stephen Haywood here in just a moment. We will introduce him in a moment or so. Our company actually provides streaming video with interactive platforms for churches and ministries. And the webinars that we do every month, and we've been doing them now for a while, they're really not sales webinars at all. They're really set up to really help your church learn more about some technical things and other things that will help you do what you guys do best, minister to people and reach people. And so we are doing this webinar in conjunction with PTZ Optics, and Stephen Haywood is our guest. And this is going to be about a 30-minute webinar. We are recording it, and it will be available later. But stick around because we're going to announce the winner of a PTZ camera. And if you've been following us, you know that we had a little contest of things you could post on social media. We'll get into that in a little bit. I also don't want to make one little more note here, and that is make sure that your Zoom settings, that you have them set to click on the speaker view. That's usually in the upper right-hand part of your Zoom program. If you click that on the speaker view, that should give you a full screen of what we're doing here. And today we're going to be doing some interactive things. And Stephen will be not just showing you slides here, but he will actually be showing you some video as well as some visual things as well. And this is the camera we're giving away today. It is a Move 4K. It's the latest PTZ camera from PTZ Optics, and it's got lots of features, auto tracking and all sorts of stuff. We'll let Stephen talk about that later. But before we go in here, we'll start in just a moment. I want to introduce all of our hosts today. Just a very short little introduction. I'm Phil Thompson. I've been working on staff at churches since the late 1970s. I've done a variety of things from executive pastor to senior pastor and pretty much everything in between. And I've been working with Streaming Church now for well over a decade. I love helping churches use technology. And it's just our pleasure to help churches in everything that we do here. And we understand the challenges when it comes to technology. We've all been in ministry. Every one of us on this host panel here have been involved in ministry and still are. And so we're grateful for you being with us today. Thanks for watching this webinar. Mr. Michael Gray, can you tell us a little bit about yourself quickly here?
Yes, I as well have been pastoring in churches for many years, filled all of the roles except for senior pastor, and have spent a lot of time in technology and other innovation areas.
Yeah, you certainly have. And Steve Lacey, who are you?
Good morning and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. I'm Steve Lacey. I'm the founder and CEO of StreamingChurch.tv. My background is primarily technical, although I've been involved with church just about my whole life. Never been on paid staff, but been on leadership boards and that sort of thing. And I'm an active volunteer, one of the video switchers at my church who's just moving to some PTZ cameras. So I've been around them and anxious to learn more today.
Yeah, enough to get in trouble. All right, and Stephen Haywood, you're our special guest today. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we start.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Haywood. I am the Strategic Partnership Manager here at PTZ Optics, as well as I have been an assistant pastor, for almost 17 years, kids pastor, media director at our church. I wear a lot of hats. So I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, again, all of us here have been involved in ministry and currently involved, and that's just the cool thing. All right, so let's move on here very quickly here. Here's what we plan to learn about today. Hold on to your seatbelts, folks. We're going to learn what a PTZ camera is. We're going to hear from a pastor and what he has to say about the PTZ cameras he's been using. We'll also hear from a volunteer about PTZs. And we will also talk about, well, what about these PTZ cameras? Are they for every church? Are they not? And we'll get some demonstrations of what PTZ cameras can do, as well as some other things. And we will have a question and answer time here at the end of this webinar. Although you can probably put some questions in right now in chat. And as Stephen Haywood is showing us some things, maybe he can answer some of those. So if not, we'll try to get to them at the end of the webinar. So with that in mind, let's just jump in here and let's talk a little bit about what a PTZ camera is. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here if I can figure out how to do that very, very quickly. And let's go ahead and go to Mr. Stephen Haywood. What is a PTZ camera? What does that stand for anyhow?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody asks that. They're like, what makes these cameras so special, right? What is a PTZ camera? And the PTZ stands for pan, tilt, and zoom. And essentially, it's a robotic camera. It doesn't require a camera operator. You, as the technical producer, can literally set this up, go up in your sound booth cave, or if you have a separate room for that, and literally control this camera with a bunch of different methods that we're going to get into here today.
Wow, sounds really good to me, but let's just kind of jump in here a little bit. So I don't know if you have one in front of you there. I mean, I've showed pictures of it on the screen here, but how big are these things? And are they all one size? Are they large? Are they 6 feet tall? Are they 6 inches tall? What's the size of a PTZ camera? Just to get us an idea. Oh, there's one right there.
Yeah, so you can see I set up a little station here that we have just a regular mug here next to a PTZ camera and the traditional DSLR, right? Everybody has or have seen a DSLR, and if I stand it on its end, this is a kit lens, so it's about the same size as a DSLR, both in width and both in just about in height. I think it's about a ½ inch larger, so that should give you kind of an idea. But the cool thing about this is you don't have to just set it like this. You can actually turn it upside down and mount it. And I like to do this, Phil. I like to do this for like weddings, to where you can get a nice shot going down the aisleway of the bride and groom or the party. Whereas if you have it mounted like this, you can't really you can't do that. So they're very versatile when it comes to setting up for different applications.
And you're not putting this on a tripod, right? I know this sounds maybe elementary, but how do you mount these things?
So you can set them on a tripod. We have some specific mounts here that I can show you for your cameras. Right here is how I have it actually mounted in the studio off a piece of conduit coming from the ceiling. We have these special mounts. I mount mine upside down, but you don't have to. And again, I do that for the range of motion of where I need it to be. But you can see right there, it's right on one of those steel mounts. But you can put it on a tripod if you so choose to.
Okay, yeah. Well, I just said tripod because that's what a lot of people have done in the past. I'm old school, right? So these things are good. All right. So Steve Lacey, let's throw a couple curveballs.
So we're going to be getting into so what, right? I mean, so it's a pan, tilt, zoom camera. Why would my ministry be interested in that? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And you're going to walk us through some of that as well, right?
Yeah, before we show like the walkthrough of our church and how we utilize this, I think it's safe to say that these cameras are so simple. Steve, you and I had a conversation about this, right? Where we wanted to know how simple these cameras were to use. And there's so many different ways now to control these cameras. But one of the things that we found through the pandemic was when churches were shutting down and, there was limitations put on churches in order to stay open, we had 4 cameras that required 4 operators. And we used to use cell phones and little walkie-talkies to connect with our children and youth who were, and that's the majority of our media team, our older children, I say like 10 to 12-year-olds, and then we have our teenagers. They would, control these cameras and man them. And, we wanted to get them involved because kids want to sit there and play on devices. They're half paying attention and they don't know where they fit because it's an adult world. So we put them on cameras. Well, when the pandemic happened, we literally had like 13 people in our media team that we were using all the time. When the limitations were put on at 10 people, that's it, that you could have in the building, and they had to be spread out. We had to come up with a way to do that.
Yeah, and one of the challenges I know at our church is we have headsets to communicate around, and sometimes those things can give you a hard time. I can imagine it being really challenging trying to coordinate with 10 different people and having some issues going on, like Larry over there, he doesn't realize he's been muted, or he can't hear us,
or he's falling asleep on the camera.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Pointing at the ceiling.
Well, and that you also have to be conscious of the people in the congregation, right? A lot of people get self-conscious in a church environment when they're worshiping, or they're just, half paying attention. Maybe they had a long night the night before, and they might be dozing in and out depending on what the pastor's preaching on that week. I mean, I've had those weeks where I've done some messages and you see some people just nodding off, right? It's getting close to lunchtime. Yeah. So you're like, all right, we got to wrap it up. But it's a way to keep them engaged and involved, and we don't want to be focusing on that. So what we've been able to do, which you're going to hear in a little bit, is we've been able to take what would normally be 5 or 6 people. We've been able to bring it down to one person, controlling all the cameras, monitoring all the cameras, making all the calls, and being able to communicate with that. And I think Phil, you have a you have a video for that.
Yeah, and we'll show that in just a second. I have a quick question though. Okay, you got these cameras, you're mounting them all over the place. I mean, you just mentioned up on the ceiling, maybe on the side of the wall. How do you connect them? How does it all connect to your network?
So that's a great question. So we have a lot of today's standard connections. Most PTZ cameras do. You have your SDI, you have your HDMI, you have your RS-232 if you're still in that Stone Age connection point. And some of the cameras have USB even. But the big thing is over the network with Ethernet, you can do what's now become a standard among broadcasters. That's NDI, Network Device Interface. And what that allows you to do is instantly find this camera when you connect it into your network on OBS, vMix, Wirecast. Heck, you can even stream it directly from the camera, which I'll show you a little later on.
Wow, that's cool. All right, let's show a couple videos here real quickly. One of them is a pastor. It's actually your pastor, right?
Yes.
And what's his name?
Pastor Ken Woods.
Okay, so let's show a video here of what Pastor Ken feels, how he feels about everything here with PTZ cameras.
Hi, I'm Pastor Ken Woods. I am senior pastor at Shiloh Ministries in Mercer, Pennsylvania. We're not a large church, we're just a medium-sized church, and the questions come up, Pastor, why did you go to PTZ cameras? And one of the things, I guess, the main things attracted me to these cameras was the quality. Number one, during the pandemic, we realized that not having a good audio-visual output was really going to affect our church. We had a lot of people that were forced to stay home. Our church didn't close, but we came in and we streamed our services, streamed our worship so that the people could still stay connected. And I thought it was very important that to be connected, they wanted to see a good quality service. Not that we're trying to sell the Bible or sell the scripture, but I don't want to see a lot of fuzz. I want to be able to hear. I want to be able to see what's going on. I don't want cameras in up close to us. These are cameras that we don't have to be manned. We actually have one that follows me around. It eliminates personnel that we have to have in our audio-visual room. It saves on I think time. It cut back on our man hours that we had to put in it. I'm very, very pleased with the production. I'm pleased with the feedback from the people. Like, wow, the service looked really good. We could really hear. Big difference. The room seemed brighter. The whole presentation was good. And it's not that I'm trying to make our church grow and be a big super church. But I want the product that we put out, I want the message that we're portraying not to be annoying because they can't see it, but that they can concentrate on what we're saying, not what they're trying to see.
Yeah, for sure, they have certainly made our life easier. Pre-pandemic, we had 4 cameras, stationary cameras. So we had to have 4 separate people running each camera, and that was hard for coordination. We had doing a production like this, it's hard to communicate. We're using radios, trying to communicate. People. We want to zoom in on the speaker. We want to zoom in on this person in the sanctuary. So what happened with the pandemic? A lot of churches, most churches had this same problem. We weren't able to have people come in. So what happened was we would have a small group, and we converted to these PTZ optic cameras. And by doing that with one switcher board, we were able to have one person run each camera, all the cameras, I should say, and so much smoother, so much simpler. And, you only have one person to communicate with, and it just made life, as I said earlier, so much easier. Now, after pandemic, we obviously kept them, and now what we did was we implemented a tracker camera as our main camera. So now that camera stays with the main speaker. We don't have to worry. We don't have to mess with that one at all. And then we still have 3 other PTZ optic cameras that the one person manning the board can move those around. And we set presets so they don't have to stay on it the whole entire time. With the presets, they can jump things around, and then they only have to track with one camera at a time. But just being able to eliminate, I don't want to say eliminate, but to reduce the people that has to converse and coordinate with to just one person, it made things so much smoother and so much nicer.
All right, so that's one of your volunteers, right, Stephen? This is actually your church, and he was explaining how easy it is for people to use this. And you're going to show us some things here in a moment. There's a couple questions in chat. Are you able to see those questions?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay.
Well, let's hold the questions off until you get a little further on, because there's some detailed questions, but
yeah, I would rather wait.
I
was gonna say, can we wait till the end with the questions, because a lot of them might be answered throughout this presentation. I feel
okay,
like
be that way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. You guys are so hard to work with. All right, I'm just kidding. Okay, all right. So move on here. What are you going to show us here next?
Well, so you were saying about the volunteer. So that was the gentleman. I've had him in youth group. That's how long I had him, and I've been training him all these years in the video, because this is something he's been interested in. So he's kind of taking it over, where I oversee it when we institute new stuff, or I have to teach him different things that he just doesn't know yet with it. So I think seeing is believing, right? And you saw all the background stuff that we have at your church. I want to preface this.
Yes, please do.
It's taken us almost 17 years to get to this point with TriCasters and 5 cameras. Actually, we have 6 cameras, but we're only implementing 4 right now, and I'm working on getting the other 2 implemented in different areas. But I don't want anybody to just kind of be like, oh my gosh, I have to be a rocket scientist to be able to use these cameras, right? So we have different ways that you can use the cameras. We have a free app for your iOS device. One of the easiest things to do is when you get your camera and you're so excited and you plug it in, if you have what's called a PoE network, and that's power over Ethernet, you don't even need to plug it into a traditional outlet. You just plug the Ethernet cable in, plug it into your switch, and you're off and running. If you don't have one of those switches, or you're not sure, check with your IT administrator, but you can also take the included power adapter and plug it in. All right, so you do that. What's next? Well, you get greeted with this nice little interface here. And this is easily found right on the bottom of the camera. It tells you how to get there. Now, I named mine differently. Mine's called hostcam1.local in the browser, but the default is PTZoptics.local. So I have multiple cameras in here, so I don't want them all to be PTZ optics. I won't know what camera is what. But you can easily control the camera. Again, it's pan, tilt, zoom, right? You can easily control the camera inside of the interface. As you can see here, I'm moving the camera inside. I can set presets. I can zoom in and out. I can snap to the focus. I can get into the menu of the camera. I can get into other control aspects of it. Image. Let's say you're a really small church. Maybe you have 30 people. You're in a hotel room. And we know a lot of people rent out hotel rooms to have church on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, right? You're the pastor, and you're the IT, you're everybody, right? you can easily come in here with our brand new Move 4K cameras and control them just by turning the auto tracking on and clicking apply, and it's going to start tracking you. And we're going to give a demonstration later. But I wanted to preface this by saying, you know, you can do it very easy from this. If that's still not easy enough for you, we include one of these bad boys. Looks like a TV remote. In fact, your 2-year-old probably would say the same thing. It looks like a TV remote. So if you can't figure this out, just find somebody in the nursery. They'll show you how to use this. But there are buttons on here that will turn on your auto tracking for the new PTZ Move camera. And this does everything too. Zoom it, move it, all that. I feel like it's like a song from the 80s or 90s, was it, right?
So there's definitely some crawl, walk, run steps that you can go through here. I mean, at your church, if it's a smaller church or a medium-sized church, but you guys are in that run phase, right? Pretty much. So
yes,
okay.
Yes, yeah. So there's other ways to control it, and we can actually do. I'm going to pull this up really quick. Some more show and tell here. On our Super Joy, this is a joystick that we offer. We actually have 3 different joysticks that you can get, and I'll kind of show that here in a little bit. But this, I can just literally just move, and you'll see my camera move just by pressing the joystick. If I whack it out like that, I can just press my preset 1, which I have set, brings me right back to where I need to be. That simple, nothing difficult about it. It searches over NDI.
And I'm assuming this is somewhat industry standard, whether I go with PTZ Optics or I go get any old PTZ camera, it's going to have some way to control it, right?
Yeah, so even if you don't have PTZ Optics cameras, a lot of our joysticks will control other cameras. Now, certain features that we have included in there may or may not work. It's really dependent upon if the cameras have those features included with it. But it uses your traditional Visca, you know, capable, especially if they're NDI, you know. There are options, and you can get in sub $1,000 price point. Now, we're not going to turn this into an infomercial here, but people wonder, like, oh man, was this going to cost me an arm or a leg? You can see our G3 starts at $329 and goes all the way up to the Super Joy, which is what I showed you, at $989. So you can go to our website and see all of the features you may need, right?
Yeah, and there's various ways to do it. I know it at our church. I think our guy bought a flight simulator controller stick and hooked it up to the cameras there. So
there you go. Xbox controllers work. If you have a kid that's no longer using his Xbox controller, you can hook that up and control the camera with that.
All right, cool.
Okay, so we got a few minutes left here.
You've got a video, right?
Show us some stuff here, Mr.
Yeah,
Haywood.
So we're going to skim through this a little bit, but this is our setup at the church. We're running a TriCaster that's feeding vMix. vMix is doing our encoding, bringing our social channels up, but this is the meat and potatoes. We talked about somebody sitting here controlling all 4 cameras in front of that multi-view output there. We don't need camera operators or anything like that. So this is pretty much our control room. We have a Mac Pro that has a backup. I think it's running Wirecast, but it's also controlling our lights. We don't have a light board. Everything's done through digital, and we have a controller for that. And this is the sound booth area. This is the gentleman that runs our Pro Presenter, and we have a Behringer X32 mixer. We control that via an iPad, and really nobody messes with it up there. But you can see right there on the balcony, we have a PTZ Optics camera for that bird's eye view of the congregation. We're going to kind of skim through a lot of this stuff. And in our welcome area or VIP section, we have a monitor there with the actual output in real time. In our fellowship hall, we have a monitor in real time. And even in our kitchen, we have a monitor. And these are all in real time. And it's great if people are preparing meals for an upcoming dinner after service. They can still be in tune with the service without any kind of delay. It's also great for our kids' room, which you're going to see here. We have a PTZ Optics camera here that just shoots the room, and we're able to switch to that input at the end of a service so that we don't have parents busting down our door. They can see on those monitors exactly, where we're at in the service. And we're just using a traditional modem and router. It's nothing spectacular for our networking system. And then in the sanctuary, you can see we're using a simple track 2, which is our, at the time, it was one of our flagship tracking cameras with some tally lights underneath it. You can see we've got one in the back. And then over on the
tally
side,
lights are the typical thing people understand about. If you're red, that means that camera's live. So
correct.
They would know where to look, or just if they needed to care which camera was being broadcast.
Right. It lets you know which camera's hot, and it'll turn green if it's queued up in preview. And this is one we have on the left side of the sanctuary, and then we have one. Let me see if I can get it here. We have another camera right there on the right-hand side of the sanctuary. So we have one overlooking the sanctuary, one in the back that's tracking, and then one on each side that gets the worship team. But I mean, that's pretty much our setup in a nutshell. And what I want to do is I want to show really briefly how our new move tracking camera works. I actually have it set up here. This is the 20X. In fact, this is the one that some lucky winner is going to get the win today. Not my camera, that's mine, but you'll get a chance to win one. But I have mine set up through my SuperJoy, so there's custom buttons on the SuperJoy that I can enact web commands to the camera, essentially the same way a remote control works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press custom 1, and that's going to turn on the tracking here, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up, and you're going to get to see this thing track me. And you're actually seeing the head in the picture-in-picture follow my every movement. Now, one of the things that we did differently with this camera is it's not constantly moving with you. As you can see, like I'm moving my hands and the camera's not moving. It waits till a normal camera operator gets to about here, and then it starts to move. And that's how a traditional movement would be with a camera. After that, I can come back here. I can hit the custom 1 button. It's going to zoom back in to that spot, and then I'm going to hit preset 1, and it's going to bring me right back to my normal shot here. Just that simple. You can turn on and turn off. So during worship, you can have a static camera shot, but maybe during the preaching, you want to track the pastor. We have a bounding box option inside there that you can select the person that you want to track, because a lot of the tracking cameras in the past, Steve, if you or Phil were walking in the picture and I'm there and I wanted to track me, it would grab one of you guys, whichever one was more animated. Well, with our new move system, you can select the person that you want to track, and it will follow that person no matter who walks in front or gets up. No need for blocking zones and things like that. So
will it follow them to the bathroom?
Well, that's one thing, we're still working on. We
That's
still got to get that ironed out.
Yeah, I got to get a bug out of it.
Yeah, let's just hope the sound guy mutes him if he does.
Camera movement is something we train with our camera operators at our church for the manual ones. And they messed up when they get past that certain zone where the pastor walks out of the frame, and you go,
that's like,
Larry, what? Oh.
All right. So before we got a couple minutes left, we'll take questions here in a moment or so. Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
I was just gonna. So, one of the things we had, are these things for everybody? So you're a medium-sized church that made this transition. What was the motivation, and how easy was it to make that transition? We kind of heard from the pastor earlier, but I guess one of the motivations was they had somebody in their congregation that was a pastor that worked for PTZ Optics, or did that come later?
Actually, believe it or not, when we switched to PTZ Optics cameras, I literally didn't start working for them until about 9 months later.
Oh.
That was the irony. I was already using these cameras. I've been using the PTZ cameras probably since PTZ Optics inception, when they became a brand. I had been in contact with Paul Richards, and I was like, I need some cameras as a self-producer that I can operate without needing a camera guy. And then it just was like, it was a no-brainer in that sense, because, one of the things that we kind of alluded to is simplicity, right? Inside here, I can even stream with this camera. Anybody that's familiar with RTMP and your stream key, you can go in here and put that in here and your stream key and start streaming by just turning this on right from a single camera. So you don't need 4 cameras if you're a small church and you want to start. And let's face it, Steve, when you start out, you don't have the volunteers. You may not even have technical volunteers, right?
Yeah. We work with a lot of pastors who are the volunteer.
Well, yeah, 100%.
So they're turning they're running a laptop and turning the stream on from the stage and the whole 9 yards. Now, do I have that correct, Stephen, that they could actually run this from the same laptop?
100%. You can open up the browser. You can go in there. All your settings are there. Your color corrections, your streaming information, your resolutions, all that stuff is in there. And we've laid it out really, really simplified. And the newer cameras have actual presets, because we all know when volunteers get a hold of this gear, they like to tweak things. And we're like, well, who changed this? Who did it? All right. I'm going after you. We actually have little.
Camera?
That's right. If you guys look down here on the bottom left, I have Steve and Steve Final. These are presets that you can export to your computer. You can also leave it there. So if somebody was messing with the colors on my camera with my joystick, I could just press that button and boom, instantly they come back to my normal color scheme, my normal focus rate, whatever, my pan, tilt, zoom speed, everything.
All right, so
that's one of the things that our tech team is just getting into. They've gone kind of a little bit hog wild and created 24 different presets, because we have a band, and they said, you're the switcher here. Here's 24 different shots you can choose from.
Yep.
So you just push the button. It's great. Just push it. In Zoom, we got the accompanist singer close up, or here's a shot of the guy on drums or whatever it may be. Yeah.
100%.
all right, so let me mute Steve Lacey here so I can ask a question. So we're talking pros and cons. Well, we've really been hearing pros, which is great. Okay, and getting back to Steve's question is, well, so are there any cons to this thing at all? I mean, what would be a downside to having one of these?
So some of the cons could be, and I say could be because it's substantial. Right. So a lot of guys, we mentioned the DSLR earlier. A lot of guys like to put different lenses in, give like a huge bokeh effect. And if some of the guys on this Zoom meeting don't know what a bokeh effect is, it's basically where, like, you can see behind me, I have the background blurred and I'm more in focus. Our cameras will do that. It gives a little bit of a depth of field on the new versions, but maybe not as intense as if you were using a actual lens on a kit, on a DSLR. Some guys still prefer to use a camera and follow. They feel it's kind of like software switcher versus a hardware switcher, right? You have that subjectory. You might be in an old church building and you can't drill holes through walls, and running cables maybe not an option. And so you got to set the cameras up every week. Maybe the PTZ cameras aren't necessarily for you in that aspect, where the senior pastor or the board says, no way, you're not drilling holes for Ethernet cables and adding plugs up here. You want to film this, you bring the camera in, you plug it in, set it up, and then you take it out with you. So I would say that's probably some instances of a con for some in that aspect.
Okay. So we want to honor everybody's time here, and we got lots of questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, some good ones.
Yeah, were we gonna jump to announce the winner now, or we gonna do that after the question?
Let me do a couple of things real quick, and then we'll get to some of these questions. First of all, let me just say that if you have questions later on, you can always get a hold of Stephen Haywood. Because we're here to help you. I mean, that's what we do here at Streaming Church. Is everything we do is all about helping you and your church and your ministry. But Stephen's that way as well with PTZ Optics. And so if you're looking at the screen right now, you guys can see this, right? Mm-hmm. PTZOptics.com, and you can reach out to Stephen Haywood, stephen.haywood@ptzoptics.com. We have a website as well, streamingchurch.tv. You can reach out to us at support@streamingchurch.tv. We have other resources as well. Blogs, blog.streamingchurch.tv. Church Solutions Podcast. If you haven't listened to our podcast, we've had Stephen on here a couple times on our podcast. Just subscribe to Church Solutions Podcast, and you can always see past webinars that we've done at streamingchurch.tv/webinars. And so that was a couple things. Let's announce today's winner, shall we?
Yes, because you're not getting my camera.
All right. Well, all right. So the winner of the PTZ Optics camera is Yeshua Akim. I think I've got that right. Yeshua Akim. And I may have mispronounced that, but we'll need to get your contact information so you can, Michael, what should he do? Should he email us or what?
Email or message, and I'll reach out to him as well and make contact in case he's dropped out of the meeting or didn't have signal. But congratulations to Yehoshua Kim.
That's probably better. Yeah, that's probably better pronunciation.
There you go.
And then I just want to remind people, we're doing monthly webinars here before we get to these Q&As. Coming up in April, we're going to talk about how pastors are using AI in their live streaming. And so the Terminator movie is coming to pass.
Chat GPT is getting very popular.
Yeah.
And there's ministries that are using it. So we wanted to go through that.
So that's what's happening with that. That's going to be in April. We'll give you the exact date on it. But AI, kind of very interesting stuff out there, AI chat and all that stuff. So we'll be talking about that next month. Subscribe to that. And now it's time for Q&A. So somebody throw some questions out here.
Well, I was going to go from the top.
That's good.
And the first question that came in was, does PTZ provide adjustments for ISO or aperture if the lighting is poor?
Yeah, we have different aspects inside. Let me see if I can go back into this so everybody can see the control real quick. You have inside here under your image, you have different luminances, so you can boost the color or the lighting, I should say, the built-in lighting, the saturation, contrast, sharpness, hue. There's inversion mode, under exposure. You have manual, you have SAE, AAE, and auto. You have iris, shutter, gain. I always do the one push white balance. You can do automatic white balance, and then you have your focus. You have all different options for that. So those are your main controls inside of the PTZ Optics camera. And ours, we may name it differently than what you know it as to be. So you have to get in there and play with it. But I will say the luminance kind of works the way the iris would or the aperture would. So you have your f-stops and stuff in there too. So
awesome.
So next one on the list here. Sorry, Steve.
No, you're good. No,
go ahead,
no,
Michael.
I'm
Michael,
good.
you were just jumping in. Go for it, Mike.
Yeah. Jeff asked, Stephen, do you personally prefer to control the PTZ cameras with software or a hard controller?
So personally, I'm lost without the SuperJoy, and that's mainly because I have so many cameras. In my studio here, I have about 12 cameras just in this room, and I have 3 other ones in another room. I do a lot of arcade and retro gaming shows, so I have cameras at different angles because you can't capture an arcade game. So we zoom in on screens. So if I had a single camera, I'd probably be more apt to using the iPhone app or the web browser to control it. So,
okay.
or even a piece of software. I think it's really relative to my workflow and your workflow.
Let's see. Next one was Alex there, Steve.
So you said the settings in the web menu. I know some settings on our camera are only available in the on-screen menu. Is that new change to the software in regards to the PTZ camera?
So these are the settings for the PTZ 4K moves. We are having a piece of software that is coming out that will. I was looking to see if it was available here I had it on this computer, but it's basically a desktop application that will give you access to other settings. It's in beta right now. If I can find it here on the website, I can pull it up. But in the meantime, we do have certain settings for certain cameras because obviously they're newer cameras.
Yeah. Jeff had an observation. I'm not sure you mentioned, but he mentioned it in the chat that the PTZ cameras are much less obtrusive and distracting than having one of the youth in the room and keying in on somebody falling asleep in the sanctuary there. Yeah. I agree with that. I know that one of the churches we work with here locally had a PTZ that they mounted in the front of the sanctuary, and it was hidden, so no one could see it. So it was a nice up close, unique angle right in the front of the sanctuary and nobody knew it was there. As opposed to if you had an operator there, they would be, sit down, what are you doing?
Yep. And take, for instance, I'm going to see if I can pull this one up right quick on my input 10. This is one of our simple track from the Huddle Cam, our sister brand. You can see there's no way I could get a tripod over there, because in the corner of the studio here, I have like this big, well, it used to be a concrete slab that we kind of put paneling and stuff over it. So how do you put a tripod there? That's the benefits of a PTZ camera. You can stuff it in a corner, you can hang it from a ceiling, get rid of all the wires. So, Phil, when he comes to your church, he doesn't trip over the wires because he's not paying attention. He's, he's kind of running through the sanctuary. Like he does that,
I do. Yeah. It's my Pentecostal roots. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I think you covered this a little bit earlier. Faith Life in Australia asked about being mobile. What are some examples you've seen of churches set up, tear down?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so being mobile, had I known this, I would have pulled the picture up. And I'm going to try to talk. So if you see me looking over, I'm looking through my pictures. I actually created a whole mobile setup that I had to do during the pandemic because we had some churches that were holding service outside in parks. And I took a 4 PTZ camera setup with a Netgear switch. And what I did was I had like 300-foot Ethernet cables that I ran from the from the cameras on tripods to the switch, ran it into a PC that was running vMix. And then what I did was I output the vMix computer with HDMI to a LiveView Solo, which gave me the internet to go out to stream it. And I still had a 4-camera setup. And I put it in a little flight case that I could, just easily go in, plug it in. Everything was plugged in within the case. So I literally plugged one plug in. I plugged it in. All my sound was hooked up. So I had XLRs in the front. We could plug microphones right in, and we were ready to go. We were up and running. And I'm not kidding you, about 15 minutes, we had it up and running. The hardest was just winding up the 300-foot of cable when sometimes we had to run it. I mean, that's the honest truth.
Wow. Sounds complicated, but actually it looks like you simplified it.
I did, and I apologize. I thought I could find this. If I do find it in the middle of this, I will. I'll pull it up.
That's fine.
So you guys can see it.
We can move on to another question while you're searching for a picture.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe the end of our questions.
See, I scared them off.
I think so.
I scared them off with that.
Is there a limit of length of Ethernet? What's the Ethernet limit usually? Was it 50 feet?
No, not Ethernet.
No. I've run 300 feet and never had any issues with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of, what am I thinking of?
You're thinking of HDMI. HDMI is 50.
Yeah, HDMI. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with PTZ cameras, it makes life a bit easier when it comes to mobile setups, only because you're getting everything set up ahead of time. You're literally just going in and setting up. I'm getting very close to it here. You're I found it. All right, here we go. Right there. That's my mobile setup. I use a little X keys controller. I have a little portable monitor that whoever is running the SuperJoy, it's the same SuperJoy that I have in the studio here, because you can set studio presets as well as another page of presets that you can use for your mobile rig. And I have 4 cameras. Everything's self-contained in that rack. And I have an output monitor for the pastor. If he's there, he can see what camera you're on, and I just showed the multi-view there just to show something on it. And literally the same way I run it at church, somebody sits there in front of the SuperJoy with the little monitor, and they can move the cameras around, and somebody else is switching. Literally,
see, I can relate to that. The newsroom setup that you have. If I'm a pastor of a smaller church, I can't relate to the newsroom setup, but that I can relate to. I mean, that's just, several boxes there, a couple monitors, and life is good.
See, I have a power adapter where I plug everything into that E107 there that you can see. So I literally have one plug coming out of this thing that I plug it in for power. Everything else is plugged into that switch.
Yeah.
And then I have a headphone monitor on here. So if the cameramen need to listen to the output or whatever, I can do up to 4, or the pastor for an in-ear situation. I've pretty much thought of everything, I think, with this, because I haven't gone there and gone, man, I should have added this. So I think I'm good.
All right. Okay, good. Any other questions before we wrap up this webinar? Going once, going twice. Anything else while we're here? So I do want to recommend that if you have questions, you can look at Stephen Haywood's email address up there, stephen.haywood@ptzoptics.com. This webinar is being recorded, unless I goofed it up, which could have happened. But seriously, we should be okay. In a few days, we'll have this ready. You can always go to streamingchurch.tv/webinar to see our past webinars. In a couple days, we'll probably have this webinar up. And I want to remind you again, just subscribe to our podcast and our blog and all that good stuff. And whatever we can do to help you. And that's the way Stephen, we know Stephen. And Stephen's actually from my neck of the woods. I grew up down below Youngstown, Ohio. And you're from what, Mercer, Pennsylvania? That area there?
Originally, my wife and I moved to Sharon from Eastern Pennsylvania, but now we live in Ohio, Eastern Ohio. Right.
You live in Hubbard.
In Hubbard.
Yeah.
But I did want to tell your audience, if it's all right, that once a month we do a show called Salt Talk, and we got to get you guys on it in an upcoming. We do it once a month, and basically we help churches and not just limited to churches. If you're in synagogues and whatever religion you're into, we try to help people that maybe don't have a tech staff. And myself and a traveling minister that we have, he's over in Ukraine. He's actually coming back in a dare. He's been on the front lines for the last month and a half.
Wow.
Helping people, feeding them, doing whatever he can, ministering to them. We do the show once a month, and we pick different topics that we can get into to help churches and that may not have a technical staff. So you can always watch that on our PTZ Optics YouTube channel.
So the way people find that is, how do they find it? PTZ Optics YouTube or what?
Yeah, PTZ Optics YouTube, and we have a playlist called Salt Talk, Sound and Light Technology. That's what the acronym, the salt of the earth, right?
Yeah, very good. Okay, sounds good. All right, so we're going to wrap this. I want to really thank all these guys here, and most of all, I want to thank you for spending some time watching this webinar. We appreciate. And again, if we can help you in any way, that's why we're here. So thanks for being a part of this webinar. And just to name these guys by who they are, Michael Gray, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
And Steve Lacey, as always, it's a pleasure working with you.
Glad to be here. Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. I was giving you a hard time.
It was good stuff, man. It was good questions. Several of them I was asking, and I was like, oh, good.
Yeah, very good questions. Steve and I have worked together for so many years that we just kind of get on each other's nerves, and that's the way it is. It's like a marriage almost, right?
Yeah, almost.
But we do love each other, at least we say that. And Stephen Haywood, we really do appreciate your input on this, and we'll have you on our Church Solutions podcast again soon.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. I thought you were doing the Walter Cronkite sign-off there, and that's the way it was.
That's the way it is, yeah. All right, guys. Thanks again for everybody being involved in the webinar. Reach out to us. You know how to reach out to us now, so whatever we can do, there's somebody reaching out to us right now. And we will be glad to help you. And so take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time on another webinar coming to you soon.